In today's tutorial, we are going to be working on the front of page 3. So I'm going to set my page base aside for just a minute and cut all of my pieces and score them. The first piece of cardstock you want to cut measures 4 5/8 by 7.5 inches. On the 4 5/8 inch side, we are going to score this at 1/2 inch on the right hand side. Next, I have a piece that measures 4 inches by 1 inch. No scoring is needed for this piece. Then I have 2 pieces that measure 3 inches by 4.5 inches. On the 4.5 inch side of one piece, I'm going to score at 1/2 inch along the bottom. And on the 4.5 inch side on the second piece, I'm going to score at 1/2 inch along the top. Next, I have a piece that measures 8 1/4 by 8 inches. On the 8 inch side, we are going to score this at 1/2 inch along the top edge. Then I have one piece that measures 6 inches by 7.5 inches. No scoring for this piece. For all the pieces with the score lines, I'm going to miter the ends on the 1/2 inch tab. Then I'm going to fold on these score lines and I'll come back and show you how to place these on the page. I'm going to start with my large flap and place my adhesive on the 1/2 inch tab section. Now I already have marked mine so that I know where to place this so it's centered on the page. It's 4 1/8 inch from the center. And I'm just going to adhere this right to the top of the page so the score line is even with the edge of the top. Then I'll burnish this down. And you want to make sure that your piece doesn't extend down past the bottom. So if for some reason your fold is a little bit long, then you want to go ahead and trim that off just to make sure that everything is nice and even. Now I'm going to open this up and I'm just going to set this piece here inside for now. We're going to be placing that on later when we have our decorative papers on the page. And then I'm going to be taking this other larger flap. I'll place my adhesive here on my 1/2 inch tab section. And this one is going to go on the right side of this larger flap, but the score line is actually going to be in the center. So I am going to place this so that that cut edge is right at the edge of the flap. So if I open this flap up, that edge should be nice and straight. Then I'll go ahead and burnish this down. I'm going to go ahead and erase this now so that it's not visible when I go to put my papers on. I'll open this flap up next. I'm going to take my smaller flap with the tab at the top. And I'm going to use my centering ruler here. And then I'm going to place this at the top in the center, making sure that that score line is lined up with the top edge of the flap. And then I'm going to take my second smaller flap, and this one's going to go on the bottom, and I'm going to line it up with the edges on the flap that's already on the page, and making sure that this bottom edge is straight across that larger flap. I'll go ahead and adhere this down. Now there will be some overlap in these two flaps. They do not meet in the center. Then this is going to be a belly band for here. So for right now, I want to make sure I actually cut this a little bit too small. Actually, I think it'll be okay. You can cut yours to 4 1/8 if you want to cut another piece. I'm going to see what it looks like whenever I get the decorative paper on. I might recut this, but I think it might be okay. And I'm going to leave that in there for now, and then I'm going to close this up. So we're going to have this that opens, and then this larger flap that opens. That's it for the build. So next we're going to come in and start with the decorative papers. The first thing I'm going to do is put some ribbons on here for a closure. I've cut 2 pieces of my ribbon to about 8.5 inches. I've marked the center of my flap here, and I'm going to just put a little bit of adhesive down and stick the end of the ribbon right in there. Now I'm going to open this up. I'm going to open these flaps, and I've marked the center here. This is just going to hold this section closed. I don't want it to hold the entire page closed. I'll put a magnet for the larger flap. So I'm going to take my second piece of ribbon and place that right here. I'm going to close those and make sure that these ribbons are centered. From this 8x8 paper, I've just cut this in half, so both pieces are 4 inches wide, and then I've trimmed across the top 3/4 of an inch, so this is 7 1/4 by 4 inches. Now this one is going to go here right on the front. I'm going to put it a little bit closer to this edge so that we have a bigger border there, and then this piece is going to go here right up against that score line. So there will be a small gap between those pieces so you can tell that they've been cut, but just a smaller gap, that way the rest of the border is uniform. I've started out with this from the Fussy cutting sheet. I've just cut this to 4 inches. I'll be placing this right here in the center for the photo space. And then I've taken this piece here. I believe there was a piece hanging off this side here. So I've cut this to 4 inches, and I've cut them to 5/8 of an inch. One piece is going to go at the bottom and one piece is going to go at the top. And then from this Fussy cutting sheet, I have cut the little cart, and I'm going to be placing it down here, only adhering down the portion of the cart that is on this cardstock so that the photo will slide behind it. And then from the 12x12 paper that has all of these cut aparts on it, I've cut these 2. I'll be placing this one on the front of the flap at the top and this one on the front of the flap at the bottom. I'm going to be using this 8x8 paper. I've just cut this in half at 4 inches, and then I've cut from the bottom 3/4 of an inch off. And I'm going to start with this piece here. So I'm going to place this piece right here on the flap, and I'm going to place it closer to that score line over here so that I do have that bigger border on the right-hand side. And once this piece is on, I did go ahead and recut my piece because it was a little bit too short and I didn't like the look of it. So I've cut this to just a little bit less than 4 1/8. That way it doesn't stick over the page when it's closed. Once this paper's on, I'm going to adhere just the ends down and make this a belly band. And then I'm going to take this strip and I'm going to place it right here on the center. Then from my Fussy cutting sheet that looks like this, I've cut this to, first I just cut across this so that it is 3 3/4, and then I've cut 2 of these that are 2 3/4. I'm going to place one on the flaps on each of those 2 flaps. Now once these papers are on, I did go ahead and cut this from my 12x12 paper from a previous page. I just never used it. So I am going to place this little journaling card bookmark down inside of here, and I'll come back later and probably add something more to this, like a photo mat, and I might add some additional decorations here. But for now, I'm going to just leave this as is. fold this closed, and then tie these ribbons to hold this part of my page closed before going on into the larger flap inside. And with that, the first thing I'm going to do is place my magnets on the page before I place my decorative papers. So I've got my magnets here. I'm going to open up this flap and get this out of the way for a moment. And I am going to just go ahead and put this right in the center of my page, and it's about a ½ inch from that bottom edge. Then I'll go ahead and place my coordinating magnet, close that flap, and open back up, and it'll also be about a ½ inch from that edge because it is the same length as this page. Okay, so I did forget that I need to take that magnet back off because I'm going to have another piece here. So I did remove this one. I left the one on the top though, so that will be fine. From this leftover piece that we had from the front, I went ahead and trimmed this down. So this is 7 1/4, and then I just split this into two 2-inch pieces. I'll be using the back side, and I'm going to adhere one piece to each side, and then I'll come in and show you how we're going to do this middle piece. Now I have this piece here. I'm going to first set this piece on my page and close this to make sure that it is completely hidden. And mine is actually a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit too big. So I'm going to take it into my paper trimmer and just trim, just this little tiny piece off. And then I'll put this back in here. Make sure, okay, now that works. So what I'm going to do on this one, on the back side of the page, I'm going to mark the center. And I'm going to be placing my adhesive on the top and the bottom, and then down that center line, because I'm going to have this be 2 separate pockets instead of a belly band. It's going to be 2 pockets, so there's going to be a small photo mat on each side. So that'll stop those from sliding all the way through. Then I'm going to take this and use my centering ruler here to place this right in the center of the page. Make sure everything is lined up. And then I'll go ahead and burnish this down. Now I'm going to place my magnet. So I just put my magnet back on the upper flap. I'm going to then place my magnet here where it was below that, so I can go ahead and get this ready to go. Now from this 12 by 12 paper here, I just cut this card out first, and then I did trim it down. So to trim it down, I actually cut right past that the little bow on this little twine on the paper. I believe it was about a ½ inch off the top, and then I just measured this to 7 1/4 inches, and I'm going to place this here in the center. Now from this 12 by 12 paper here, I've just gone ahead and cut this to 8 inches. I'm leaving it the dimension it is here. I didn't even measure it. It's 5 3/4. And I'm going to be placing this right here on the bottom portion of the page. Then I have taken this 12 by 12 piece and I've cut this to 8 inches. You could center this if you want to and cut 2 inches off each side, but I'm going to do mine off center. And I'm going to take my fussy cutting scissors. I'm going to fussy cut just a little bit below where the scalloped like lace is, and I'm going to leave a little tiny bit of the purple. I'm going to fussy cut around the ribbon here in this, so I'm just going to remove this bottom portion. Then I'm going to be adhering this here, but I'm going to be leaving this portion open. That way, if I need that photo to tuck up underneath of there, it still will. Or I could place a photo here and a smaller photo here. So there's plenty of options, but I do want this to be open so that that photo can slide behind it. So I'll go ahead and fussy cut this, and then I'll show you what it looks like once I have it adhered to the page. So here is my page finished. So you can see this will slide up underneath this, and I did leave the scalloped piece open just a little tiny bit as well, but I didn't leave it completely open because if you wanted to put a 4x6 photo here, you would just put it right over top of the scallops there. But if you wanted to put it this direction, it would tuck underneath of here. Or you could put a smaller photo there and another one here, or right there if you didn't want to put it over top of that paper. So this is it for now. I will come back in obviously and add some photo mats here and maybe something else in here, and then I will add some embellishments in a later video. So that's it for this tutorial, like I said, and if you are just joining the tutorial series, don't forget to click on the description box below where you can find all the links so you can purchase the products from the Scrap and Create website and my Etsy shop if you want to follow along. I'll see you in the next tutorial.